David Bizer, founder and CEO of Talent Fountain, is going to talk to you about culture. Culture first, and why it matters more than you think. Enjoy.
Thanks, Hunter. I got enough of those. Hello, good afternoon. How's everybody doing? Yeah, good, yeah. Come on. I had 4 or 5 coffees before I got on stage. You should have tried the same thing. So you think I'm going to juggle microphones, right? No. I have a mission this afternoon. We're going to be together for an hour and a half unless I scare you away and you walk out. So I'm going to try to make this the most interactive session of how to web, okay? But it all relies on you. And I know where I am. I know I'm in Romania. I know the culture. Okay, this is my 4th time in Bucharest. So I know people are kind of shy, kind of don't, want to get up. But we're going to try something a little bit later, and I really, really hope you participate. And just think, if you participate, you're only going to be helping yourself. Okay, so let me put these down because I don't want to look like a drummer. So let me tell you a little bit about myself before we get started. So my name's David Bizer. I grew up in the United States, went to school at the University of Colorado in Boulder, which is a great place to ski if you like skiing. And I lived around the U.S. quite a bit. I lived in Manhattan. I lived in Silicon Valley, where I guess a lot of you are familiar with and have ideas or dreams that relate to Silicon Valley. I actually had the great chance to work for Netscape, which was the beginning, as far as I'm concerned, of the internet and the basis for everything that we're really doing today. So I worked for Netscape for a couple of years. It was fantastic. Then I got a job offer from another American software company to move to Paris. And who at 25, 26 years old would say no to a job offer for an American guy who doesn't speak French or any other language for that matter besides English, doesn't really know what they want him to do, but says, yeah, you can go to Paris, right? Of course you take the job offer. It's now 20 years later. I'm still in Paris. So now I'm officially French. Don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I wanted to vote, and I wanted to go to that EU customs line in the airport, right? Those are the 2 benefits of a passport. I was super fortunate and got asked to join Google in 2003. I was the first recruiter for Google in Europe. We were 10 people in Paris, about 100 people in all of Europe. And during a period of almost 7 years, we hired about 5,000 people in Europe. So it was an amazing, amazing experience. In 2010, I started my own company. I worked for 3 years for a German investor, investing in startups and running an accelerator program. And since then, for the past 5 years, I've been doing headhunting. So looking for senior executives for startups, hiring the most important key players for startups across Europe, and doing consulting and workshops and training on things like culture and recruitment and performance management. So that's me, and hopefully gives you some reason to believe I have some credibility to stand up here and share some things with you today. Okay, so the first part of this afternoon, I want to talk about culture and give you a general overview of what I think it is. Okay, how many people were in the session just before lunch? The guy from Timmy. Yeah, a few of you. So I thought it was really interesting because he started off by saying that that relationships made the culture what it is, right? And I actually think that's really, really true. And the types of relationships that you can form and the types of companies that work, to me, almost seem to be cult-like. And having talked about culture for years and years and years now, I actually don't believe that there's any one particular type of culture that you can prescribe and say, here's the secret recipe, this is what's going to work for you, this is what's going to make you a success. It's rather understanding that culture and building something that everyone can understand, that everyone can feel aligned with, and everyone starts speaking the same language so that you're moving in the same direction. And you might look at one company and say, wow, they have a crappy culture, but they're doing phenomenally well. You might look at another company that you think has a great culture. They're also doing phenomenally well. So what is going on there? What makes the difference? So let's talk about it. What exactly is it? Yep.
Can you have the case where the culture is great, but the results are crappy?
Yeah, I mean, yes, and so the question was, can you have a culture that's great and the results are crappy? The thing is of course you could, but what I'm trying to say is there's no such thing as a great culture or a bad culture. Right, and I'll try to explain that further, because it's really, does the culture work for your company, right? And if you think it's a great culture but you get crappy results, then it's not a great culture, right, for the company. So a lot of times when people think about culture, they think about things like that or images like that, okay? About having the slide in your office. I remember at Google, they told me why there was a slide in the office in Zurich. Why? So that the engineers could get to lunch faster, okay? The slide isn't the culture, but the reason behind it is. Okay, don't waste any time, get there. There's other things like massage rooms, okay? It looks great for marketing. Candidate probably says, oh, I want to work in this place because there's free massage, okay? Definitely not culture, maybe a nice to have. Good luck if you're working for a really successful company finding time to go have a massage, okay? This is my favorite room, which I did visit once, again at Google in Zurich. It's the aquarium with massage chairs, and I guess there's a bathtub there as well, right? Oh, and there's imagine nice music in the background, right? It's a gimmick, right? I mean, yes, you can go hang in there for 10 minutes, right? But it's not the culture to me. And finally, the ever essential games room, right? You need the PlayStation, you need the Xbox, you need a foosball table. No, you don't. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, but at the end of the day, that's not gonna make or break your company, okay? A lot of people think, you know, this is Silicon Valley, this is what we have to emulate, we have to have all this cool stuff, we have to look cool. I don't think so. I think this slide, which is the worst slide you'll see in my whole presentation, and I've done it on purpose, is what culture is all about. It's all of these different things that all of these different people say it is. Okay? Yeah, you can take a picture and study it later. It's true, right? What's up there was a survey done amongst 25 senior executives to say, you know, what is the culture at your company or what's important to culture. So all of those things on there are reality, okay? But as you can see, even if you just catch 2 or 3 of them, it's very different depending on who you are. But I think that that's what it is, okay? To emphasize the importance of culture, right? Most of you may or not agree with me saying it's very, very important. I really think, you know, we should focus on this on our companies. But the reality is that you don't. It's kind of like recruiting. You think that you should hire the best people, but you don't invest the time that's required to hire the best people, okay? So, the example of why is it so important, right? So Peter Thiel, relatively famous or infamous, depends who you are, investor in Silicon Valley, says, I'm going to invest $150 million into Airbnb, okay? A lot of money. Airbnb had already raised, I believe, $200 million at that point, okay? So he's investing after that. So already a pretty big enterprise, right? Today, I think they've raised something like $3.4 billion. Okay, but just to give you an idea of where in the process he's investing. So, makes this investment, the company, as most companies do or should do, invites the new investor to the board table and says, what is the one thing that you would suggest we do well or we do right? Obviously, you know what the answer is. He said it, that's not my words, don't fuck up the culture. That's really powerful. It's powerful. It's very powerful to me, right? That the guy who invests $150 million and is asked, what's the most important thing for us to consider at this point in our journey, is the culture. So obviously it means something, and if any of you follow culture or it interests you a lot, go check out the Airbnb story and go check out the culture and how much they've invested into it, because it's obvious. It's obvious that they've invested massive amounts into it, right? And when you talk to people who work at hotels or in hospitality, they're always saying things about Airbnb, right? They're always afraid of Airbnb or what they're doing to that industry. But I don't think they should be afraid of Airbnb. I think they should be afraid of the culture that Airbnb has built, because that's why that company has been and is still so successful. Okay? So, I've come up with 3 things that I think are essential when you think about your culture wherever you are, okay? You might be in a small startup, you might be founding a startup, you might be in a scaling up startup, you might be in a big corporation, you might work for a consulting firm, a bank, I don't know. My understanding is that there's a mix of all of that in this room, okay? I think that there are 3 things that you need to consider as a baseline for what is your culture all about. And the first thing is decisions and decision making. So how does decision making work at your company? Are people allowed to make decisions? Right? I did what I call a culture audit last week, and I was just shocked at the number of people who didn't have the power to make their own decisions. Right? So part of it is how do you make the decisions, part of it is who's allowed to make the decisions, and then what is the style with which those decisions are made. Biggest lesson I ever learned at Google, if any of you ever work at Google, keep this lesson in mind. If you want to have a decision made, you must show the data behind it. There's so many companies today that say we're data-driven, we're data-driven, we're data-driven. I don't have the real facts on this, but I'm pretty sure Google invented the data-driven model of management because anything you wanted, you could get it if you had the data to back it up. If you didn't, don't even bother making the argument. That to me is part of the culture and part of how you think about decisions, okay? And so to illustrate this to you in the most simple way possible, this is from Twilio. Okay, you may know them, you may not. They just made a massive acquisition of SendGrid for $2 billion a couple of weeks ago. If again, I'll keep encouraging you this, but if you like this culture stuff, take a look at Twilio. They did a really, really interesting exercise on defining their values. And so in terms of decision making, this is one of the ways that they talk about it, right? Just figure it out. Right? That's what they want you to do. Just figure it out. So the other thing that I want you to think about as we're going through these points is how can you make what your culture is visual, right? Because that's how people are going to start to understand it more. If you just had a picture of that up on the wall, of course it would be funny and everybody, or most people who walk by it would think it was funny and get a laugh. But how do you make it visual so they see it, and then how do you make it visual so that they feel it? Which leads to the second point, which is behavior, okay? So many, many companies have lists of values or principles or a culture statement, a manifesto, whatever it is, right? Many, many companies have that. And most of the time, they're on a poster or on a coffee cup, on a mouse pad, I don't know. They're written somewhere, and people have seen them, but that's it, right? And nothing, or almost nothing on that piece of paper or coffee mug is actually real, right? Let me give you an example. It's very trendy today to say we're transparent. Okay, would you agree? I gotta find a place to stand that the lights aren't like blinding me. So transparency, right? Are you really transparent? Do people see that in the way you behave in your company, in the way that everybody behaves? Is information flowing freely, right? Probably not. Then why is it up there? Or what can you do to make it a reality? So this is my example of behavior. It's about Facebook. These are real pictures of Facebook offices when Google launched Google+. Okay? So at that time, it was a big threat. Today, obviously, we know it's gone or should be gone. But it came out, and at Facebook they said, uh-oh, big problem. And the one picture that I've never found is the picture where inside the Facebook office there's this kind of glass room, and there's a neon light on the outside of the door, and up top it says lockdown, and you flick the switch when there's a crisis like this, and it's lit up lockdown, meaning nobody's leaving until we figure out how we're going to attack this, right? And then you see things like this pop up, Carthage must be destroyed, et cetera, and I didn't have time to add this into my presentation, but if any of you have been watching the news over the past couple of days, Facebook is being attacked again. And you see that culture coming through in the reactions, right? I'm pretty sure I heard it correctly as I was working and had CNN in the background that Zuckerberg said, "We're at war." Did anybody else hear that yesterday? You did? Okay, so at least one person, it's not just me. So, so you see that, right? That's the culture. Whether you like that or not, doesn't matter. That's the culture. So the people who like it will rally behind it. The people that don't will not be there, and that's okay. Okay? So, third point, communication. Okay? Show of hands. How many people think that communication in their company works really well? Okay, I know we're in Romania, so don't be shy. If nobody raises their... Okay, 1, 2. Really? Because it doesn't take a lot to raise your hand. It's super easy. Like, don't be afraid. 3. Okay, there's probably 80 people in this room, right? Maybe more. 3 people say communication works really well. Isn't that sad? Don't some of you want to cry? No, I mean, to me, that's horrible, right? I mean, I can't imagine it, right? To me, that's what makes companies work in most cases, right? So I have this, whatever, picture. 3? For any size crowd, 3 is low. Now, I mean, it's really low, right? I mean, if there were, because I'm very bad at math, but if there were 100 people in this room, that means 3% are happy. That's very low, right? But the interesting thing about it is that you can do so much to improve it. You just need to start communicating, okay? And I think it's harder for me to talk to the big companies, but for the startups, and maybe this does apply to the big companies, and maybe somebody wants to share, but for the startups, I think you fall into this place in your evolution very quickly where you believe everyone knows everything that's going on. But I will tell you right now, they don't. As soon as you grow bigger than the desk that you all sit around, okay, so I don't know how many people can fit, 3, 4, 5. As soon as you grow bigger than that, your communication starts to break down. Okay? So maybe for the big companies, we can think of it that way as well. In what close contact are you in a daily basis with your team, the greater team, other functions, right? But it's easier for me to visualize the startup process. I remember very clearly one of the startups I was working with. They were growing. They had, let's say 10, 12 people. And then they needed to get more space, right? So these 10, 12 people were in one room, and then they needed more space. So they took another room over here for another 10 to 12 people. Then what did they do? As most do, they put all the developers over here and everybody else over here, okay? Immediately, breakdown, communication breakdown. And you think people know what's going on, but you don't. I'm repeating myself. But the other thing that I think the guy, I'm sorry, I don't remember his name, at 11:30 said was about the monthly meetings that he does. right? And I remember at Netscape, at Google, at this other small software company that I worked for that you don't know, we had weekly all-hands meetings. Weekly, right? And I love the idea of getting people up on stage or in front of the audience to exhibit behaviors and recognize people, right? There's so much you can do that's positive with that kind of a meeting structure, right? And if you're at a big company or even in a bigger startup and your company doesn't do that and you're saying, you know, oh, well, we can't do that or we're never going to do that or the CEO doesn't give a shit or whatever, you can do it for your team, right? Think about the ways that you can do it, okay? So, if you think about all this stuff and invest a lot of time in it, you might be so lucky as to come up with something like that. Might not be the same, hopefully won't. Anybody know the company that's behind those words? You probably wouldn't. It's super small. It's a company called Buffer. Maybe you know it now that I'm saying it, but it's a small company. And Buffer is one of those very, very rare startups that invested massively in their values and culture from the very, very, very early days and spent a lot of time talking about it, thinking about it, iterating on it. This is at least the second version of their values. And there's two reasons why I always mention Buffer in pretty much all of my talks, is because one, they do invest the time, they did think about it early, they understand how important it is, but also when you look at what they've written there, it's real, right? If you look at other company value statements, other things that companies have put together in terms of on a poster or whatever, most of it's just like, it's boring or it looks the same as everyone else's. Immediately you look at this and you think it's real. Immediately some of you look at it and say, wow, that really speaks to me. I could really see myself working in a company like that. And that's what you want. And you don't want it to appeal to everyone. It's great if some of you think, yuck, I don't like that. Brilliant, because then you don't belong in that company and that's fine, right? Wouldn't it be great if you could start off by saying to people who are looking at your company, this is who we are, this is how we behave, this is how we act, do you feel like this could be you, right? That's the type of thing that you want to get to. Another thing, I don't know, I should actually figure out where the data for this comes from in terms of geography. But the slide is saying that culture, values, and senior leadership are the most important thing to today's employees, right? And money is far off. Now, of course, you always have to provide for your employees. People need to earn money to make a living and buy food and housing and take vacation and things like that. So you have to pay what you need to pay. But what people are much, much more interested in and why they stay at jobs is because of those top things there: culture, values, senior leadership, right? So if those things are the most important, again, wouldn't you want to invest more in them? So, okay, this is the beginning of the second part where I want to try and make this more interactive, okay? Because if I have to talk for another hour by myself, you're going to fall asleep. So, okay, I've got all these different things to talk about, and what I'd like to figure out is, with you, how can we do these things better, and how will it improve our culture in general, okay? So the first topic, and maybe the easiest one to discuss, is recruitment, okay? So who thinks, now this is here we go, it's going to be tricky now. Who thinks that they do recruitment pretty well? Fuck. Oh, great. Okay. Of the people that just raised your hand, 2 of you come down here. Please, 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 I won't bite you. This will be good for your personal development, right? Public speaking, getting up in front of an audience, this is a good thing for you, right? You can put it down on your annual review. I got one guy. I don't have two? Come on. Yes. All right. Awesome. Hi. Nice to meet you. Thank you. This is great. We've got two guys. They're going to start, and then the rest of you are going to join in. All right? So, one for you. You want to sit, or you more comfortable sitting, or you want to stand?
I'm going to stand.
You're going to stand. Okay, great. All right, so in recruitment, right, it's very important to be able to attract people to your company. Would you agree? Yes. Okay, so I'm going to ask these guys to share with us how they might attract people to their company by giving a 30-second, 60-second pitch to the audience as if they were a candidate for your company, okay? Because you know, in startups at least, the elevator pitch to investors is critical, right? You've got to have your pitch down. You spend all this time working on the deck. You spend all this time working on what you're going to say to those investors because you want money. But you know what? Nobody does it for recruiting. Nobody thinks about what are we actually going to say. So let's hear what these guys have to say about their recruiting pitch, and then we'll go on. So, if you will. And introduce yourself. Tell us what coming.
I will start because I'm not prepared at all, so it's easy. I'm tutor and I'm a tax partner, so this is very easy to attract people to tax practice. So let's start. I would like you to join my team purely because I think that we have the best team in the industry. This is very easy to demonstrate via the clients we have and via the work we are doing. And yes, we do offer a very good remuneration package, so that would be clearly a differentiator as regards the other firms. And given that, I would very much like to hear your views on how you would like us to behave and how to work together, being the fact that we are here to invest in people and we are here to work together over a longer period of time.
Thank you, thank you. Excellent. Well done. Next.
Hi, I'm Nikolai. Actually, I'm a recruiter, so that's why I raised my hand. And this is the last time I'm going to raise my hand. Don't be like me. So, actually, I'm a part of a startup. It's called HRS. We're a recruitment company from Romania. We actually started 6 months ago. Why should you join my team, the IT recruitment team? Well, if you want to move fast, and if you want to break stuff, and if you really want to do an amazing job with an amazing team, well, then we should talk, and you should join ours and be part of something amazing. That's about it.
All right, so I'm not going to embarrass these guys any longer. It's Tutor. Yes. Thank you very much for participating. Nikolai, thank you. See, that wasn't hard, right? And those guys are now really happy that they did that. This is the hard. They were really happy. I mean, really, really excited. Oh, yes, they are. Oh, yes, they are. We're going to do different formats. You don't have to stand up. Okay. This is the hard part, okay? Who will join Tutor's tax practice? No, let me put it a different way. Who would like to hear more? 1, 2. All right. All right, all right. Not bad, not bad, not bad. And who would like to join Nikolai's startup? Okay, a few less, okay, but not bad, not bad. So this is the thing, right? You need to be able to have that discussion, 30 seconds, 60 seconds, with anyone, anywhere, right? I mean, I believe deeply that you should always be recruiting, right? Because you never know when the right person is going to be face-to-face with you for that next role that you have open. And it might not be tomorrow, but it might be in 3 months or 6 months. So you're constantly talking about that. And you're constantly talking about what roles you might open in the future so that you're ready for that. Because one of the biggest mistakes that people run into in recruitment, I think especially at startups, is it's urgent, right? You get investment, the investors are on your back because now you need to grow, 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 grow. So how do you grow? Hire, hire, hire. And you're totally stressed out, so you just hire anybody who walks through the door, right? Because, well, that's what happens. But you don't want to do that. So if you've got that pitch down, and you've got it well, and you've trained the people in your company to do that, you're going to enlarge your candidate pool and your candidate pipeline significantly. Okay? Does anybody want to ask? I'm going to go through these things relatively quickly. But if you have any questions or want to interrupt, interrupt. Okay? All right. So the next thing is onboarding. Okay? Onboarding in the sense of how do we get people on the first day up and running as quickly as possible? Okay? So, try it again. Who thinks they know how to onboard people or have gone through a good onboarding process? You don't have to stand up. We're going to the couch. All you in the back, come on down. You're the next contestant. Great. All right. So we're going to go over here where it's cooler. Hi, I'm David. Nice to meet you. All right, have a seat. All right, so we're going to talk about onboarding. I'll do that after maybe. I want to go backwards. Hi. Hi. David, nice to meet you. All right, so we're going to have a little conference here, a little discussion. Ah, that's nice. So tell me, when was the last time you were onboarded, or who was the last person you onboarded and why did it go well?
I wanted to give my example because the last time I was onboarded was in March at the company I currently work at Emirati. Yeah, it was a very great experience because I didn't expect any of it. I've got full attention on day one. They even brought me a cake because that's the thing they do with everyone, that we do with every employee that joins our team. And I had a very, I don't know, nice discussion with the CEO about the values and the culture, and everyone was very fun. I think we took some shots at the end of the day or something. It was pretty cool. And from day one, I saw that people were both fun and focused, and I really loved that.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I hope everybody writes down cake and shots. So, do you want to tell us a story of your onboarding or someone you're onboarding?
I think it's better to tell the story about someone that we onboarded recently. A few months ago, we had a colleague that joined our development team, and actually we developed this onboarding process over years and years, and we really try to take care of every detail. Every detail counts. Everything has to be ready. The desk has to be ready. We try to have a small welcome pack. We try to raise ideas from other colleagues and what worked in their cases. We are inspiring from a LinkedIn toolkit, from onboarding, and we have to, we try to arrange even the lunch break for everyone, the meetings with managers, with colleagues. So just take care of every detail.
I'm just curious about one thing. When you say you arrange the lunch break and the meetings with managers and colleagues, how long do you plan from when the person first joins? So, you know, the person comes, do you plan their first day, or do you plan a week, or do you plan more than that?
It really depends on the team, but actually I think it's the first 2 weeks or so.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you both very much. Hey. All right, this is going well, right? You're into it now. All right, so you see, what I think is so interesting about what both women said is that It's little things. It's little things that make a big difference. I know I made a joke about the cake and the shots, but they made an impression, right? Or the little thing of setting up a lunch. Because I guess many of you can relate to bad onboarding experiences where you show up and your equipment isn't ready, your manager says, oh, I'm super busy right now, so just kind of have a look around and I'll get back to you in a few hours, right? This type of stuff is really unfortunate, okay? So to give you the Google example, right? And as I said earlier, Google will only do things if the data suggests it or the data validates it. They, of course, did a study, and what they found was by sending an email the night before the new hire starts to the manager with 5 points, if the manager followed those points, the productivity of that hire would increase by 25% compared to the ones who did not receive that onboarding. That's a lot, 25%, okay? Now, the reason I have this funky slide up there and the reason those things are circled in red is because it's a little bit harder than I'm making it out to sound, right? It's not just an email with 5 points. It's an email with 5 things to do, but behind those 5 things have gone a lot of thought and a lot of research into what those 5 things should be. And so one of the first things they talk about is having a roles and responsibilities discussion. If you've heard about OKRs or you do KPIs and things like that, from the very beginning, from day one, start talking about the role and the responsibilities of that individual so you can drive that forward, get that person performing. Okay? Ready? Next. Okay, so retention, right? How do you keep people in your company? What always shocks me is the amount of time and energy and money that go into hiring someone and then probably training them, and then we just kind of let them drift and hope it works out, and hope the magic superstar comes around, right? It doesn't work that way. Not if you want really, really high performers to A, perform, and B, stay. So, how do you get people to stay at your company? And what's one thing that I think everybody could do, but probably you don't? Can anybody guess? How many people here do one-to-one meetings with their manager or their employees? Ooh, this is much better than 5 years ago. With the hands, how many of you do that on a weekly basis? Okay, a few less. Still okay. I would guess 25% on the weekly and maybe 40 on the I do it whenever. So the thing is that most people's excuse for not doing that is because they don't have the time. They're too busy, right? But if the number one thing that makes your company a success is the people, then why don't you spend time with the people, right? It's so simple, okay? And so let me tell you how it works, or how you could make it work, okay? So you're the manager, you have to drive this, or maybe you're the employee and you can just suggest it to your manager, okay? Either way, Friday afternoon, okay, the employee spends maximum 15 minutes, but more like 5. Sending a short email to their manager. And that email says, what did I accomplish this week? What am I going to do next week? And what's holding me back from getting things done? Okay, what barriers are in my job? Those 3 things, right? Even if you think to last Friday, for any of you in this room, I'm sure you could think of those things very quickly and understand how you could write that in an email in 5 minutes, right? Maybe. So you send that off on Friday. The manager gets it. On Monday, the manager has their one-to-ones, okay? I don't know about your companies. When I was at Google, we had large teams. So doing 7, 8, 10 one-to-ones on Monday was not unheard of, okay? 30 minutes. You're prepared for the meeting because the person sent in the things before. You go through that with them. You now have that opportunity as a manager to push that person in the way that makes sense for them to be pushed. So again, if you heard that earlier presentation, if they're the politician or the motivation or the, I don't know, whatever their personality profile is, you push them the way that they need to be pushed to achieve more, and then you as the manager take responsibility to remove the barriers, because that's what a manager can do best for their employees, is help them overcome whatever's standing in their way to get what they need to get done. Okay? That's it. And then it continues on a weekly basis. There's a million other more things you can do. We could talk about team meetings. We could talk about monthly meetings. We could talk about quarterly OKR reviews and all kinds of things like that. It would take days, okay? But just that one simple one-to-one, okay? Think about it and try to put it into place. Does anyone have any questions or want to stop on that or anything? No? Okay. Okay, so to finish out part 2, the last thing that I want to talk about is training or learning, right? Unless you're living in a cave, most people would probably agree that many employees today, especially younger generation, says, I want to learn new things. Agreed or not? Yes. Okay, so we know that that's important, right? We know that that keeps people, we know that that drives people, makes them happy about working for your company. So I think what many people fear, though, is that they think that it's expensive or the results are limited, et cetera, et cetera. And I would agree with you depending on what you implement. Right? So obviously you could, hire a guy like me and I will charge you a lot of money to do the training. I'm just kidding. No, but if you hire like specialized consultants to come in and do training, yeah, of course they can cost a lot of money. So you're scared away from that. You also might think you bring someone in to do consulting or training on, I don't know, leadership, right? Do the people actually get anything out of it, right? I don't know. So I want to share with you an example of something that was created at Google, internally at Google, that if you like what I'm telling you, you can go to that link and learn more about it. So it's called, and it has a terrible name, Googler to Googler. I can't stand that name. But basically, the essence of it is one day, one person, and a lot of things at Google work this way, said, I'm going to offer training to my colleagues. Okay, and I don't know what that particular training was, but this one person says, let's just say, I'm going to offer training in Excel and how to do advanced macros. I don't know what it is, okay? And I'm going to offer that to my colleagues, and any of my colleagues that want can come to my training. Very easy to put together. Right? Very easy to advertise, get the room, have the people come, do the training, okay? From this one start, it ballooned enormously. Today at Google, 85,000 employees, right? 85,000 employees. 80% of their training is done on this platform, peer-to-peer. 80%. Think about that when it comes to cost. Okay? But think about it when it comes to actually learning. Okay? You have permanent access to the people who are doing the training. So if you take a course on Excel, or if you take a course on salsa, which exists, right? You can offer anything. Okay? How to roast a turkey. Okay, you can offer whatever you want and people will come, right? But all of that you have access to follow up, and that's great. It creates links throughout the company. I mean, there's nothing that I can think of that's wrong with this program. And the other thing I really like about it is I think that any company, any size can do this. Obviously, if you're small, you're going to have less choices, but you can still do it. And it gets people involved in their learning, involved in training, involved in developing themselves, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? You like it? It's cool? You happy? You want to jump up and down? Okay. So, bottom line in this is what Tony from Zappos says. If you get the culture right, then everything else will follow. And I think a lot of that's true. If you think about just what we've talked about so far, we're already miles and miles ahead. Okay? So, I have some time remaining, and I'm going to try to do my little stage interaction again, because I know some of you are still dying to come up here. So let's talk about more things that we could look at in terms of developing our culture. Okay? First, sorry, I'm like dying of heat. Okay. So if we want to understand our culture, right, we have to talk to people about it, right? We have to ask people questions. So I told you earlier that I did this culture audit last week. So that's one of the things that I do, right? I go to companies, I do this culture audit. But let me give you a little secret, and I hope not a lot of people watch the video. You don't have to pay me to do it. You could do it yourself, okay? You could do it yourself. If you take the time to pick out a certain number of people in your company and say, I would like to speak to you for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, whatever, to understand what you think about our culture as a company, and then you come up with questions like, you know, why did you join the company? What attracted you to the company? Why do you stay here? What do you like about it? What do you dislike about it? What do you think the core values are? What do you think the strategy of the company is? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, if I give you all my questions, then not good. But you interview these people, and I've figured out that once you interview like 10, 12 people, you've got it. You've got all the information you need. You take them from different levels, from different functions, from different geographies, whatever. Once you interview 10 or 12, you will just start getting a lot of the same. A lot of the same. So it's not actually a very extensive exercise. I mean, there's always something new you can find out, but if you just want the sense of it, right? Because if you want to do something about it, you have to understand it, right? And you have to invest the time to understand it and invest the time to do something about it over and over again, okay? So, and there are tools that you can also use for doing this, right? If you don't want to bring in someone like me, if you don't want to do it yourself, there's technology, okay? And think a lot of, and if you type culture audit or what's one of the big companies called Culture AMP, A-M-P. If you're really into that stuff, they do all these surveys and there's more science behind it, and you know, so you take the survey and they spit out the answers to you. So there's all kinds of ways that you could do that, but take a look, okay? So, okay, communication. So remember, we talked a little bit about communication earlier, and 3% of the audience said that their communication was really good, right? Was that right? Where are you, 3%ers? Yes, you. Where's the other one? Come on, 3% is more than one. You know what I'm doing now. You're scared. Come on. Well, can you come down and we'll get the other person? Come on. I'm not going to bite you. Nobody's going to bite you. This is going to be great. You can say, I got up on stage today, Mom and Dad. Yes. Come on. I'll do it with one guy, but there we go. Excellent. I am improving the personal development of people in Romania today. Hi. David, nice to meet you. Thanks for coming down. This is great. Hi. How are you? All right, let's sit, okay? Here you go. Here you go. Please. Okay, so communication. You guys, I guess, were one of the few in the whole audience that said, at our company, communication is really good. How so? How can that be possible?
I can start first.
Go.
It's funny because I was thinking about your question. If you were to ask me last week, I would say it's very bad. But yesterday we had the first meeting. I'm part of a small startup. I started with my sister and my colleague from high school. And last week, we were fighting, in a loop about some meaningless stuff. But this week, I raised up, and we had a pretty productive conversation. And I have to say, it's pretty hard because I have a lot of biases, because I'm doing this with my sister, and I was all stuck in my mind and not responsive enough. But now I had time to analyze my behavior, and she said yesterday that my meeting has improved very well.
Excellent. Good to hear. So you and your sister are communicating well now.
Yeah.
This can take years, I know. I have two.
But she's moving out of the, yeah. But I was thinking to turn her room into the first office. So I will work next door.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah, I don't think you can beat that.
Yeah, I'm hopeless. So my name is Catalin, and I came here to shake your hands. And,
we did that.
Yeah. And to tell you how are we communicating in my company. I'm working in Harman, and there on a daily basis we are having meetings in open space where our line manager, public speaking, is telling us what are the news of the day, what are the focuses of the day, and the biggest challenges. In my team we are 50 developers, 50, and this is the most important from my point of view type of communication, because everyone is being fed from the same source in the same time, so it's visible. It's like transparency plus.
Okay. Do you, so you have kind of what do you call it? Is it like Scrum? You have a stand-up meeting every day, or?
No, we also have Scrum, but that is a technical meeting.
Okay.
This is only for the information point of view, the communicating, connecting with the managers and each other in the team.
Okay.
Maybe I need a piece of work that another colleague of mine is able to help, but I do not know that. Having this kind of meetings helps us to work together.
And would you say that, because you say that the manager, shares news of the day and what's going on, would you say there's a dialogue that, other people are getting involved with that?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, okay. Okay, great. Thank you both very much. Thanks. Again, thanks. All right. They were great. They were great. See, now I know you want to come up here. So, I mean, I talked about communication in the previous section, and we just talked about it now. I mean, I don't know how to emphasize it further, but people are dying to hear from you. People are dying to exchange. That's what makes businesses turn, right? So any way that you can communicate more and more frequently using different mediums, right? You need to figure out what works for you and your company and your teams, but please do that more. It will only help you. Recognition. Okay, so, a lot of people think about recognition and think about bonuses or increases in salary or stock options or whatever it is, right? But I had this experience where I was asking a whole bunch of people, do you feel your contributions are recognized by the management? And they were all very positive about it. They all said yes. And I said, well, how were you recognized? And most of the responses were either in an email, a pat in the back, just said, you did a good job, things like that. That was it. I never heard anything else about, nothing monetary for sure, right? And then what really made me start thinking about it was another person that I talked to in the same company. And we were kind of talking about, you know, just the culture in general, what works, what doesn't, blah, blah, blah. And this guy, who's a pretty senior level executive, says what's really wrong with this company is we don't celebrate. And I heard that, and I'm like, wow, because I come from a background of companies, culture that was celebrating as much as possible. But I heard that, I was like, yeah, wow, that sucks. Like, how can you not celebrate? The company itself actually is doing well and has lots and lots of reasons to celebrate. And then I thought back, and I thought, well, all these people, though, say to me that they feel recognized. So do they care about celebration, right? Does it matter to them? Are they thinking, we don't have this, so it's not so good here? And so when you think about, the point I'm trying to make is that when you think about recognition, you have to think, what do the people here want in terms of recognition? What's most important? Because it can be extremely varied, right? A lot of people feel that opportunity is the best form of recognition, right? What other opportunity can you present to me? What other types of positions, what other types of roles, responsibilities can you offer me? Because that, to me, is what I want. Other people are driven by money, right? I mean, it definitely exists, right? And you need to know the difference between those people, right? I mean, it's always amazing how sometimes you'll find people in companies who work so hard and it has nothing to do with the money, right? They work so hard because they believe, right? They just believe in what they're selling, or they believe in the product or the service, and they want to be there, and they're proud to be there, and they get all of that, right? So you have to know what it is that drives people in order to figure out how to recognize. It was also interesting to me, again, I keep referring to this other presentation because it was also talking about culture and thinking about, I can't remember how many there were, but there were at least a list of, you know, probably 12 different types of people in the organization. And you know, the guy was trying to explain, how do you manage these types to get the most out of them? And it's a little bit contrary to what I'm saying, which is you need to understand the people and what they need and what they require to be high performers, but then also I would go further than that and say you should also define the type of people that you want, right? And go for those people, because then you're going to be able to manage types and profiles that you understand, that you can communicate with. So, recognition. Okay, so this also is about education, okay? So we talked about the Google example of peer-to-peer learning, but of course today there's endless opportunities to give your people learning things, okay? So unless somebody's dying to come down here and talk to me, I'll do it a different way. Does anybody want to talk about education with me? Close up and personal on the couch. You do? You want to come back? Look at this. We have a new taker. Oh, wow. All right. Come on. Let's go. Come back. Come back. That's so nice. Yeah, come. Hi.
Victor.
Nice to meet you. All right.
I love participating. So.
Great. You have, oh, I already have one, yeah. All right. So I want to figure out other ways to educate people at work, to give people learning opportunities, right? So I've got my own ideas, but I'm curious as to what you might be able to share with the audience in terms of things you think might work. I'm gonna let you go first.
So I go first? Okay, so I'm Victor. I work at a small startup, Creative Motion. We have a website, creativemotion.ro, if you want to check it out. Sorry for the advertising. It is a very, very small company. Started by 2 high school students. Now they are in university. And I joined somewhere along the way with the intention to learn how it is in a company. And what I learned, I didn't necessarily learn how it is in a company, but I learned how real life is, actually. And I think this is the most important experience as your first job, as your first opportunity to see, in a way, how hard real life is and how much effort you have to put in everything that you do.
All right. And could you think of any like specific types of training that you've received on your job or specific learning opportunity that have stood out to you and you think, wow, this is really great that I have this kind of opportunity?
Yes, so the first thing first, when I was the first time at the headquarters, small headquarters, it was just a room. The first time he put a big paper in front of me, give me a marker and ask me, craft an idea. Give me an idea and we'll develop it together. I was like, holy shit. Excuse me, you just hired me and now you ask me to give you a big idea to work with. And well, I started working on it and I saw how hard it is to give an idea. Well, after I made the idea, I hit the first wall. What now? I have an idea. What do I do? So I really believe that one of the best ways to learn or the best methods is to hit those walls, to hit the first wall. What do I do now? Hit the wall of self-confidence, hit the wall of where do I get information? How do I manage by myself? Because you can't always be helped by your manager or your colleagues. You have to do some stuff by yourself.
Excellent. I like that. Thank you. Welcome back. Welcome back to the show.
Hard to beat that.
Oh, come on.
He's very insightful for his age.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
I also think that the best method of learning is by doing. So you just start somewhere, you get some data, you get some information, then you start a project and see how it goes and learn from your mistakes. But I think that also sharing among ourselves as a team is also very important. For example, we have a rule. If someone goes to an event on company money, they have to make a presentation and tell everyone what they learned at that event and how they think what they learned can help the company improve or grow or anything. We also just built up a library of books. And yeah, our CEO is very obsessed with buying a lot of books. And he usually does this specifically. So the last time he went away and came back with some books, he told me, like, those 3 are for you, because I really think that you need to learn this, this, and this. Get through them and tell me what you think, for example. Or, of course, we also have a channel on Slack, #learning, obviously, which is where we all put sources, videos, I don't know, TED Talks that we found amazing, or things like that. But I think sharing is the #1 learning thing we do in our company.
I love that. And so often I see that companies operate in silos, or, you know, there's not a lot of sharing of different information, not only just information, but best practices, and, you know, I figured out something, this might help you. Of the things that you described, how does the company encourage that? Right? I mean, I understand, okay, the conference thing makes sense. You go to a conference, you have to make a presentation. But in terms of the books or things like that, right, you can't just build a library and expect people to come. How is that sharing environment encouraged?
You're encouraged to try new things, to, I don't know, settle back and try to help someone with their own thing that you know nothing about, for example, because I'm surrounded by developers and I'm not one, so that's fun. And I think that a lot of it comes, yeah, from the leadership. Okay. I mean, our CEO is also a person who really loves to help startups, to get involved in educational, I don't know, trainings, speeches, anything. Okay. And a lot of our culture is based on education, because most of the developers in our company are interns who came there from college and then stayed there, and most of the people in the company are at their first job, actually.
Okay, okay, great. Thank you both so much. Appreciate it. Thanks, you can just drop that. There's so many ideas around learning and education and what you can give to employees. I think that one of the most important things is that whatever you have, make people aware of it. I think there's so many times there are learning opportunities at companies, but the staff or the employees, they're not aware of what they can do, right? I'm sure if we went around and asked just the front row what kind of learning opportunities there are, we'd get another 15 different, very interesting examples, right? So again, it's kind of, what do your people need? What do your people want? And how do you facilitate that? How do you encourage that and get people to take advantage of it? Because it's a great opportunity that we have. Okay. So, finally, I wanted to talk a little bit about goal setting or objectives, or from where I come from, meaning Netscape and Google, OKRs. Because OKRs were something that started at Intel way back in the day, and that John Doerr, who's a famous investor from Kleiner Perkins, brought to Netscape and then Google, right? One of the things that shocks me, just shocks me, is when I go in and talk to different companies and I say, do you have objectives? And the answer, more often than not, is no. This is, so let me... Now I can't ask you because everybody's going to raise their hand. No, but we're in Romania. How many people have objectives in their job? Okay, so a good amount, but I skewed the question. But so the thing is, and not to be offensive, but then everybody who didn't raise their hand, what do? Right? I mean, maybe it's just because my whole professional career I've grown up with it, so I'm just completely biased, but I don't understand how you can hope to perform or achieve or succeed or whatever if you don't have objectives. I just don't really get it, so I'm sorry. But I think that it's super important to kind of have something that you're shooting for, okay? So whether you believe it or not, let me explain, I guess, my theory and kind of my experience behind it. I think that it makes a lot of sense to spend the time thinking about, in the next 12 months or whatever time period you're comfortable with, where do I want to go and what do I want to achieve for what I'm responsible for? Right? So if I'm the head of recruitment for Google in Europe, you know, obviously I have a certain number of hires to make, but how do I want to develop my own people? What kind of impact do I want on the employer brand? How am I going to source all the candidates that I need? What am I going to do about the interviewing process to make sure that it's highly effective? What am I going to do with universities? You know, like there's plenty of things. And to then start prioritizing them and figuring out what are the most important things that will really move the needle if I do them this year, right? One of the things that I really like about the OKR process is that if done correctly, it should force you to do more. One of the golden rules, if you will, is that if you hit 100% of your OKRs, then you've done it wrong. You shouldn't be able to hit 100%. I think the number is somewhere between 60 and 70%. That if you hit between 60 or 70%, that's about right. And the reason for that is because you've put more than you could possibly achieve into those OKRs, which is going to help you achieve more than you thought you could, if that makes any sense. From a psychological standpoint, it works. Right? So just the simple fact of saying, you know, I'm going to create a very aggressive list. I mean, not insane, okay, but aggressive. And this is what I want to achieve. You will, just by doing that alone, push yourself, okay, to achieve more. And then, if you do that, it bakes into the rest of the management cycle, right? You're not going to go look at your OKRs in every one-to-one meeting that you have with your manager, but on a quarterly basis, you can step back and say, how am I progressing towards these OKRs that I've set for myself, right? Am I getting there? What am I missing? What do I need? What help do I need? Do I need to change direction, right? So I think there's a lot that you can do with it. And again, this whole thing around OKRs and goal setting and objectives and is a two-day talk, right? So we can't get through it all, but just again, it speaks to your culture in droves what you do around this subject. and if you really put thought around it, and can you build a process whereby it's both top-down and bottom-up, so that there are overarching company goals that you can get people bought into all the way in the hierarchy, all the way in the structure, right? Because then you have this aligned company and you're moving in the right direction, and that's ultimately what you want to be, is fully aligned and moving in the same direction. So, what's time is it? Right, perfect. So, now what? The big question, right? So I wanted to leave time at the end for you guys for either questions or comments or ideas or whatever, right? Because we've talked about a massive amount of different things this afternoon in a relatively short period of time. So maybe there's something else you want to talk about. Maybe there's something you want more clarification on. Maybe you want to ask me how to get a job at Google. I don't know. It's been a while. I don't know, but I'm open to anything. But I think it would be interesting to have kind of a back and forth for the remaining time. So, you know, we hear what people have to say sitting down and not up there. Do we need mics or can we just yell? Okay, good one. So, yes and no. Yes and no, right? It's very hard to get people to change in general, especially as they get older, right? But what I think you can do, and what I've seen happen to me personally, right? I'll give you the example, even though I think it's horrible, okay? I don't know who's going to watch the video, but okay, so here we go. There was a time at Google when they hired, let's try to keep like individuals out of this. They hired some guy to take over a large group, okay? And the guy taking over the large group said, you know, one of the most important things for me to do as I'm new here is to understand what everybody's thinking, how do you like to change things, et cetera, et cetera. The kind of message you want to get from a new manager, right? I'm here to hear what you have to say and I'm going to help you get better. Right? So I said, oh, wow, this is great. I've been waiting for somebody to say something like this so I can unload all of these things that are driving me crazy. Right? So I went home and I wrote this ridiculously long email about all the things that I wanted to change. Right? And, well, the guy then sent that email to my ultimate boss and basically said, what the fuck is this? And what did she do? She then, huh? She. Yeah, actually, the whole chain was women except me. That's why I got into HR in the first place. So now you're distracting me. Right. So then that woman, the ultimate boss, called my direct, well, I don't know, one of my direct bosses at the time, who was a man, and said, fire him, right? I mean, and this was on a Sunday. and thank God for this guy who then said, whoa, you know, let's calm down a second and whatever. And so then I had this talk with another one of my managers, a woman, and she said, look, you need to understand something. One of the most important values of this individual, the woman at the top, is loyalty. And some of the stuff that you said in the email was directly bashing somebody else, which it was. And so she came from this background where loyalty is important, loyalty is still important, and they said, look, you can't kind of crash through that value, like it's too sacred. And so you need to calm the hell down and take a big step back, and you're not going to get fired, but, you know, watch out. So that to me was like a massive lesson, right? A massive lesson. And it could have gone either way. Either I just continued bashing and eventually I would get fired probably, or I said, okay, I got to back way off this individual attack and try to fight something else, right? So yeah, you can change people, right? Or you can make them act differently, but you never know what really the outcome of that's going to be, right? But I would always argue that you want, as much as possible, those people to be aligned, right? And so if you can't get the alignment that you want with whatever you're trying to align on, then that person eventually needs to go. Okay? Yep.
What are the traits for, in your experience for Eastern Europe? What traits different?
In general? Yeah, I mean, first of all, generalizing is not something I like to do. So I've gone to a lot of tech conferences in Central and Eastern Europe, right? Number one generalization that I would make is most people don't like to jump up, okay? Or even raise their hand and ask questions, right? It's very hard as a speaker to engage with the audience because you all look most of the time very flat, right? I mean, it just, right? Like to get people to smile and to engage is tough. But that's like all from a public speaking thing. Yes, I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. But on the other side, I love working with people from Eastern Europe, especially in tech and startups, because I happen to think that you're incredibly driven. I happen to think that you have a hunger that if you compare it to Western Europe is much more significant in the sense that you want to achieve a goal, you want to get there, and you will bust your ass to make it happen. And that's something I really like. But you know, it's all generalizations. Yeah.
I'd like to know if the company values need to be improved or not.
What do you mean?
If you think, like an employee, you don't really fit with some of the value, would it be interesting or worth to fight to change something?
So another great lesson I've also learned is you have to pick your battles wisely, right? You have to decide what's worth fighting for. So the only way I can answer your question, the only way I know how, is to say, do you want to fight for whatever it is you're referring to? In the sense, like, if there's some kind of value that's in the company and you don't like it or you think it should be different, then is there any way you can change it, right? Do you have that kind of access that you could make something change with it or not? Because that's going to be a big determining factor. And then the other thing is like how significant is it to the way that you operate, right? So I keep my favorite example from Google is the data-driven value system. And so it's like, well, what if you can't fit in there? Like, what if making decisions based on data isn't your thing? Like, I'm actually very anecdotal, right? It was very hard for me. It was much easier. For years, and many people know this, Google did so many interviews for candidates, right? Like 8 was kind of a low number when doing interviews. And for years I said, this is ridiculous. We only need 4. We only need 4. And they're like, yeah. And but what did they finally do? They paid some PhDs in statistics from Stanford to run a study on how many interviews are necessary before there's diminishing returns. Guess what the number was? 4. Okay, so you see, it's like, do I want to fight that? No, because I can't. It's in the you know, the soul of the company, right? So I'm just going to live with it. Yep. Yeah.
How do I know at what stage do I get my team in contribute to those values? So do I generate them?
Yeah.
Should I encourage them to jump in and bring the team in? Because they're mostly getting positions.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult to get the nuances of words sometimes in
So I'm always going to say be as inclusive as possible, no matter what size of the company. Obviously, when you're dealing with bigger companies, you need to get some kind of representation. You're never going to get everybody. To your point that they're all technical, Google was technical until 10 people. So number 10 employee of Google was the first commercial guy. And some of their values were definitely in place from the very beginning. So I think that the people that are taking this very seriously, like the example I gave from Buffer, those guys, the founders, they're starting discussions about this from the very beginning, right? And just talking about it, because that's all you can do in the beginning. It's going to evolve. And then if you want a kind of a different take on it, the slide with the owl on it that I said is from Twilio. Go look at Twilio values. Just type Twilio values and try to. There's a video and there's an article. It's the guy, the CEO, did a very, very interesting exercise, and he did it later in the company. And he also, I think, if I remember, advocates waiting until about, I want to say 50 people. I'd probably, for me personally, go earlier, but there's not a secret recipe, right? You got to do what feels right to you. But I think just the thinking part and the engaging part and the interacting with people around you part is to be done from very early.
How much time should you invest in aligning a new employee to the company's mindset, culture, and when should you stop and admit that they failure?
So I definitely can't give you any kind of exact prescription for that either. But yeah, so there's the induction process and whatever that is at your company, right? For some companies it's a day, for some it's a week, for some it's 3 months. It really depends on how it's designed, right? So after some certain period of time, and like there's a good chance you might have like a similar thing here that we have in France, which is before 3 months you can fire the person like really easily. Do you have the same thing here? Yeah, okay. So that also becomes a factor, right? Which actually surprises me that it's not used more in France, right? And in France there's you can extend an additional 3 months. So because it becomes so hard to fire them after and so costly, why on earth don't people use that as the simple barrier? Like, is it working out in 3 months? Or if you have that 6-month option, is it working out? And if not, boom, out. Because the thing about people aligning or low performers or whatever is everyone takes way too long to deal with it because you don't want to, because it's a pain. It's not a pain, it's painful. Nobody likes to get rid of people. It sucks. But the longer you wait, the worse it gets for everybody. And Google in the beginning was very bad at that. Very, very bad at that.
Is there a way to, let's say, fix your mistakes after?
To fix your mistake?
If you didn't do the onboarding process.
I mean, you can always evaluate and look at, like, why didn't this person work out? Is it something cultural? Do we need to look at our culture? Do we need to look at how we interview? Do we need to evaluate? I mean, it's a lot of stuff. But yeah, you can look at for sure and try to analyze why that happened and what would you do differently the next time. Sure. There's so many questions. I don't know who's putting up their hands first or not. So go ahead. Yeah, that's my company, a small company. Yeah. What do I do? Nothing. I do some executive search, so headhunting, mostly for what I call early stage startups, but that would be like A, B series across Europe for key positions. So over the past years, we've been hiring things like COO, CFO, CMO, CSO, whatever, right? It's different than most other recruitment firms because I personally like the variety, so I keep that. And then the other part of what I do is consulting on talent management, recruitment strategy, culture, doing training, workshops, masterclass, and I like talking. Well, sometimes. Yep.
I have a comment with respect to some previous questions about
sure.
values of the company versus values of the team.
Great.
We started 4 or 5 years ago. We had 2 partners with a team of 6. Not from day 1, but day 2 or day 3. We hired some consultants in communication in order to identify brand values and define a brand. Because even if the 2 partners are experienced people, more or less, like we're in the 40s, as we're technicians and engineers and people who deal in technical matters, find it sometimes pretty hard to express the feelings, the values, and pretty hard to determine. And this is why we had some consultants, pay them as such, in order to identify which would be the core values which unite the team, rather than the company. The company is the partners.
Mm-hmm.
The values of the companies are the values of the partners. It was pretty easy in our image. If we want to restrict ourselves to this, we just identify the values of the partners and that's it. These are the values of the company. This is where we went to go. But since we emphasize the team value, small team value, we involved everyone, including our secretary, in order for the image to better reflect the company itself and the team itself. So this has worked very well for us. We've done this in a matter of 2 months' time. Various meetings, some exercising with the communication company, some role-playing, and so on. Various techniques in order to identify some values which are being embraced by everybody in the team, in which everybody believes. And things are going well. My question for you would be, things start to develop. Some companies grow in time, hire new people. What would be, based on your education and experience, the best recipe in order to make everybody new coming on board to embrace those values, to practice them on a daily basis?
So I think we have like
Most specific and practical recipe, like a work that you might have based on your experience, it would trigger everybody to.
So I think this is an extremely long discussion. I mean, it's a very good question, but it's an extremely long discussion. So I'll just rattle off a few things that come to the top of my head, but I will definitely say I don't think there is a recipe. But what comes to mind immediately is first a very serious and thoughtful induction from and including senior management. Right? So what I mean is when you bring in a new batch of people, and anytime you can bring them in batch is going to make your life easier, the CEO or a representative of the CEO is one of the first people that those new hires see who is describing the vision, the strategy, the direction, the values, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Because the CEO owns that. Right? So whenever possible, that should take place. Okay? And then the second thing, which I think sums it all up, is the behaviors. And the management team needs to exhibit the behaviors of whatever you've decided is your value structure on a day-to-day basis so that it's visible. And again, what I think the guy said earlier, which I think makes a hell of a lot of sense, is very frequent all-hands meetings where you're able to exhibit those behaviors. Quick answer. I think one more. I don't know who's keeping time here. You were up there. I have to give it to him. Sorry. Yeah.
I would be curious, what's your opinion about purpose-driven organizations?
Ooh.
And as you have mentioned
I'm a bad person to ask that question because I've not done a lot of research on it, and I feel like if I answer, I'll just be spewing bullshit, and I don't want to do that. So I'm just not well. What do you call it? I don't have a lot of knowledge about it, right? All I've heard, and to me this has been really recent, is that more and more people are looking for purpose-driven organizations. So I've been hearing that a lot, but what that means, besides like people want purpose in their lives, which makes sense, I don't understand how organizations are structuring themselves, and that's just me. I just haven't yet looked into it a lot. When you talk about Zappos and holacracy, as far as I know, it failed. And that's all I know. You caught me. All right? Here, go. Yep.
So I wanted to ask one thing regarding choosing the values. Are there any values that are mathematically superior? Like you always see, no, sorry, but for example, you always see big companies talking about transparency, hard work, opportunities. You always and always see the same values.
Yeah.
But you never hear about secrecy as a value, which can be in some moments.
Okay, great question. From a mathematical perspective, I have no idea, but you should ask Google because they probably have figured it out or done some kind of a study. But what you say is something that I'm actually very, very passionate about, okay? Because different things are going to work very well at different places. Anybody here work for Amazon? One person. Okay, so you can disagree with me if you want. But I think that Amazon has, from my viewpoint, a very tough, difficult culture that is not for everyone. Okay, you agree. Thank you. So is that bad? Absolutely not. It's one of the most successful companies on the planet, right? So is the fact that they have massive turnover in their staff a bad thing? To somebody from the outside, like me, I could say, yeah, that's horrible. Why is the turnover so high? Why do so many people leave? But you know what? For them, it's actually part of their business model. It's part of their business model because the culture is tough. The culture is so demanding that most people can't make it. Most people can't get past the first year or don't want to get past the first year, and that's fine because the people who do fit the Amazon way and has made it one hell of a company. So, you know, if you want, and I think if you type Amazon leadership principles, you'll find there, I think it's, was it 14 now? 11, 12, whatever, somewhere around that number. You'll see them, and some of them you will definitely say, what the hell? Like, no way, I'm not attracted to that. And that's fine, because they don't want you. It's fine. It's fine. You want that. You want people to be attracted to your company for what you are, who you are, and those people are going to perform the best, right? So theoretically, Amazon wants people to see that, right, and say, I'm joining because I know what this is, and this is exactly what I want. I think we're done.
Yeah. So, big round of applause for David, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.